He didn't ask this time. He trapped me against the cold metal, the torn pieces of his third proposal scattered at my feet. He didn't hold up a sign. He took off his varsity jacket, forced it over my shoulders, and leaned in until I breathed his air. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the diary, my beautiful drama addicts. I'm Mimi, and tonight we are diving into a high school hierarchy where the word no is a declaration of war. When the untouchable Ice King gets rejected 3 times, he stops playing games. He stops being the superstar the school loves. But what happens when he gets tired of asking nicely? Let's find out, shall we?
I slammed my locker shut. The bang echoed down the main corridor, but it failed to cover the sound of ripping cardboard. I dropped the torn pieces of his third promposal at my feet. The hallway went silent. It seemed like dozens of students stopped breathing. Kwon Tae-Oh did not flinch. He did not pick up the pieces. He moved. 1 second, he stood 10 feet away. The next, he boxed me in. He braced one hand against the gray metal above my head. His other hand was planted on the locker door beside my hip. I had nowhere to run. You tore it. His voice held zero emotion. He wore his custom blue varsity jacket, the gold letter resting inches from my chest. I don't do spectacles, I said. I don't do arrogant athletes. I don't do you. I kept my chin up, refusing to shrink under his shadow. I needed to graduate, secure my Yale admission, went and leave St. Jude's Academy in the dust. I had no time for a privileged boy playing games. He stared at me. He did not step back. The air turned thick, charged with something dangerous. Every student watched, waiting for the untouchable ice hockey captain to destroy the scholarship girl who dared to humiliate him. Then he reached for his zipper. He pulled his jacket off. The heavy wool and leather slid from his broad shoulders. He stepped into my personal space and draped the massive garment over me. The sheer weight of it settled around my neck, carrying his body heat and the distinct scent of cedar wood. It swallowed my uniform. "Take this back," I ordered. I grabbed the collar to shove it off. His hand shot out and caught my wrist. His grip brought no pain, just absolute, unyielding control, and the cold metal of his ring pressed against my skin. He leaned down, lowering his head until his lips brushed the shell of my ear. "Keep it," he whispered. The deep timbre of his voice sent a shock wave through my chest. "Tomorrow, you sit at my table. You eat my food. You let them see who claims your time." I tried to pull my arm free, ready to throw the jacket in his face, but I looked up. The terrifying, possessive warning burning in his dark eyes stopped my breath in my throat. He was not asking anymore. The games were over. The St. Jude cafeteria hummed like a wasp nest right until I pushed through the double doors. Then, dead silence. Hundreds of eyes locked onto me, or rather, they locked onto the dark blue wool draped over my shoulders. Tae-Oh's varsity jacket swallowed my frame. It weighed me down, carrying the scent of cedar wood and undeniable danger. I kept my chin up, walking straight to an empty corner table. I sat down and opened my AP chemistry notebook. I just needed to survive the next 40 minutes without a scene. A shadow blocked my light. I looked up. Sloane stood across from me, flanked by 3 cheerleaders in identical green skirts. Her manicured fingers drummed against my table. "Take it off," Sloane commanded. Her voice echoed in the quiet room. "You think wearing his letters makes you special? It makes you a joke, Jordyn. He is doing this for a bet. You are a charity case." I flipped a page in my notebook. "Are you finished?" Sloane flushed bright red. She leaned across the table, her hand shooting out to grab the lapel of the jacket. "I said take it." She never finished the sentence, and a broad hand closed over Sloane's wrist. Tae-Oh materialized behind her. He wore a plain gray t-shirt, his jaw set in stone. The entire room stopped breathing. He did not shout. He did not even look at Sloane's face. He stared at the exact spot where her fingers touched his jacket. "Let go," he ordered. Sloane snatched her hand back, her eyes wide with panic. "Tae-Oh, I was defending your name. She does not belong in your clothes." "Walk away, Sloane." His tone held the warmth of a blizzard. "But she—" "I will not say it again." The dismissal hit like a physical blow. Sloane's shoulders collapsed. Absolute humiliation washed over her features. She spun around and fled to the far side of the cafeteria, her friends trailing behind her in pure panic. The audience waited. They expected a speech, a declaration, some explanation for why the untouchable hockey captain just destroyed the cheer captain over a scholarship student. He gave them nothing. He pulled out the chair across from me. The metal legs screeched against the floor tiles. He sat down. I gripped my pen, waiting for him to demand gratitude or gloat about his rescue. I prepared my defense. I built my walls high, ready for war. He ignored my glare. He reached across the space between us, his fingers wrapping around the edge of my lunch tray. He pulled it across the plastic table until it rested in front of his chest. He picked up my fork, scooped up a bite of my food, and ate it while holding my gaze. I needed silence. The cafeteria had been a war zone of stairs, so I retreated to the one place the elite crowd avoided during lunch, the third-floor reference section. The aisles here were narrow, flanked by towering metal shelves filled with dust-covered encyclopedias, a perfect fortress. I sat cross-legged on the floor, my Yale admission prep book resting on my knees. I pulled his heavy varsity jacket tighter around my shoulders. I hated that it felt warm. I hated that the cedar scent anchored my racing pulse. Footsteps broke the quiet. Heavy, measured, deliberate. I did not look up. I traced a line of text with my highlighter, pretending the world outside this aisle did not exist. A pair of scuffed white sneakers stopped at the edge of my vision. Tae-Oh sank to the floor, folding his tall frame into the cramped space opposite me. Our knees almost touched. He wore the same unreadable expression from the cafeteria. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. "You are hiding," he stated, and I flipped a page. "I am studying." "You are running from the noise." "I have actual goals," I shot back, meeting his dark eyes. "I do not have time for your fan club, your cheerleaders, or whatever dominance game you decided to play today. Go back to your throne." He tilted his head. He did not look angry. He looked fascinated. "You think I care about the crowd," he said. The deep resonance of his voice vibrated in the narrow space. "You think I asked you to prom 3 times for an audience?" "Of course you did. Everything you do is a performance." He leaned forward. The space between us vanished. I pressed my back against the cold metal shelf, my breath caught in my chest. He boxed me in, just like at the lockers, but this time there were no witnesses, just us, the dust and the intense heat radiating from his skin. "What? You assume you know me," he murmured. "You see the money, you see the ice. You build your walls because it makes you feel safe. It keeps me focused." I tried to sound tough, but my voice wavered. He reached out. His fingers grazed the edge of my book, stopping right beside my hand. "You volunteer at the downtown clinic on Tuesdays at 4, he whispered, leaning closer. His lips hovered a fraction of an inch from my ear. "You drink black tea on Thursdays. You retreat to this exact aisle when the noise gets too loud. I have watched you for 6 months, Jordyn. The crowd never mattered." The text message said the AP chemistry review session moved to the athletic center. A complete lie. The heavy metal doors of the St. Jude ice arena slammed shut behind me. A thick metal chain rattled against the exterior handles, locking me inside. No, I yanked the handle. Locked. Faint laughter echoed from the other side before fading down the corridor. The temperature inside sat below freezing. I wore my standard uniform skirt and a thin cotton cardigan. I had shoved Tae-Oh's varsity jacket into my locker 2 hours ago to escape the endless whispers. Now, the bitter cold bit into my bare skin. I pounded my fists against the steel door. Nothing. The main overhead lights powered down, leaving only the dull red glow of the emergency exit signs reflecting off the massive sheet of white ice. 10 minutes passed, then 20. My teeth started to chatter. My fingers turned stiff and pale. I wrapped my arms around myself and sank to the rubber-matted floor near the bleachers. The cold stopped stinging and started burning. A harsh, grinding noise shattered the silence. The service entrance at the far end of the arena thrust open. A tall silhouette filled the doorway. Tae-Oh. He wore his dark practice gear, a heavy equipment bag slung over one shoulder. He stopped. His eyes scanned the dark arena and locked onto my huddled frame in the shadows. He dropped the bag. He closed the distance in seconds. He did not ask what happened. He did not demand names. He saw my shaking shoulders and took immediate action. He dropped to his knees in front of me on the freezing floor. He unzipped his thick, fleece-lined team parka and pulled it off his shoulders. He wrapped the massive coat around my shivering frame, but it was not enough. The chill had seeped deep into my bones. "Look at me, Jordyn." His voice carried a raw, terrifying edge. I tried to meet his dark eyes, but my entire body convulsed with another violent shiver. He did not hesitate. He shifted closer, pulling me flush against his chest. He wrapped his strong arms around my back, crushing me into his solid frame. He bowed his head, resting his cheek against my temple to shield my exposed skin from the freezing air. His body felt like a furnace. The heat radiated through my thin uniform, chasing the ice out of my veins. I rested my face against the curve of his neck, breathing in the scent of cedar and clean soap. My chest tightened. My breathing hitched. I closed my eyes and focused on the steady, powerful rhythm drumming against my ribs. I tried to blame the frantic pounding of my heart on the dropping temperature, the trap, or the adrenaline. But as his grip tightened around my waist in the dark, the lie dissolved. My heart was not hammering from the cold. It was hammering for him. I walked into AP Calculus expecting an ambush. The school week had been a battlefield. After the ice arena, I braced myself for Tae-Oh to escalate. I expected him to block my locker, command the cafeteria, or pull another arrogant stunt to prove his control. I sat at my desk and dropped my backpack. Nothing happened. No heavy varsity jacket, no intense stares from the doorway. The warning bell rang, and he remained absent. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. A part of me, the irrational, sleep-deprived part, felt a strange, hollow ache in my chest. I pushed the thought away. I had Yale early admission to worry about, not the unpredictable moods of a hockey captain. Then I looked down. Resting in the center of my desk sat a book. It was not a standard school textbook. The leather cover felt worn, the edges frayed from time. I traced the gold foil lettering on the spine. Structural Integrities of the 20th Century. It was a rare, out-of-print architecture volume. I had spent 3 months scouring internet forums for this exact edition for my Yale portfolio project. He found it. I opened the front cover. A small, crisp index card rested against the title page. The handwriting was sharp, jagged, and precise. You build walls. I study how to break them. No name, no signature. He did not need one. Heat flushed my neck. My heart hammered against my ribs, mirroring the exact frantic rhythm from the freezing ice rink. He was not performing for an audience. He was paying attention. He remembered a passing comment I made weeks ago in the library. And this was not a territorial claim. This was a calculated, deliberate invasion of my mind. I closed the book and held it against my chest. I turned my head toward the large glass windows lining the classroom wall. 2 stories down, standing in the center of the stone courtyard, Tae-Oh stood alone. He wore his dark practice hoodie, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. The morning wind rustled his dark hair. Dozens of students walked past him, but his focus remained locked upward. He stared straight into my classroom window. He met my gaze through the glass. I did not look away. I gripped the leather-bound book tighter. Tae-Oh tilted his head. He gave a single deliberate nod. Then he turned and walked away, leaving me trapped in a snare I never saw coming. The summons came during 5th period, so a security guard escorted me out of AP Biology. He did not let me stop at my locker. He marched me down the silent corridor, straight to the administration wing. I stepped into the main conference room. The temperature felt 10 degrees colder than the hallway. Dean Lockwood sat at the head of the long mahogany table. To his right sat Preston, the hockey team's backup captain, wearing a smug, satisfied grin. My stomach twisted. Preston hated Tae-Oh. By extension, Preston hated me. "Sit down, Miss Biles," Dean Lockwood ordered. I took the empty leather chair. I kept my spine straight and my hands folded on my lap. I refused to let them see my fingers shake. "We received a tip this morning," the dean began. He slid a manila folder across the polished wood. "IT ran a diagnostic on your assigned school laptop. Then they found the master answer key for next week's AP Chemistry midterm downloaded to your hard drive." The air left my lungs. The room tilted. "I never downloaded anything," I stated. My voice held firm. "I leave that laptop in the student council room every afternoon. Anyone could access it." "The tip was quite specific," Preston chimed in. He leaned back in his chair, twirling a pen. "It is a shame. Yale revokes early admission offers for academic theft. Your foundation grant will disappear by Friday." He set me up. Preston framed me to hurt Tae-Oh, using my entire future as collateral damage in their elite rivalry. My pristine record, my endless nights of studying, the sacrifices my mother made, all of it rested on the word of a bitter, arrogant athlete. The board would never believe the scholarship student over a legacy family. "We are convening an expulsion hearing tomorrow," Dean Lockwood said. I opened my mouth to fight back. I prepared to demand a trace on the network. I prepared to tear Preston's lies apart. The heavy oak doors of the boardroom crashed open. The wood slammed against the wall. The sound cracked like a whip. Dean Lockwood jumped. Preston dropped his pen. Tae-Oh stepped into the room. He did not look cold. He did not look calculated. He looked like pure, unhinged destruction. The veins in his neck stood out. His jaw locked tight. He bypassed the security guard and stalked toward the mahogany table. He stopped right behind my chair. The heat from his body wrapped around me, a heavy shield against the freezing room. He did not look at the dean. He locked his burning, lethal gaze on Preston. Tae-Oh raised his right hand and slammed a silver flash drive onto the table. The metal clattered against the wood. "You have the wrong thief," Tae-Oh declared. His voice promised absolute ruin. "And you made a massive mistake touching what is mine." Dean Lockwood stared at the silver flash drive like it was a live grenade. Preston lost his smug grin. The color drained from his face, leaving him pale and sweating. Tae-Oh leaned over the heavy mahogany table. He did not yell. He never needed to. "Plug it in," Tae-Oh commanded. The dean fumbled with his laptop. A video file filled the screen. It showed the student council room at midnight. Preston stood illuminated by the glow of my assigned computer, typing on the keyboard before pushing a removable drive into the port. And the timestamps match the exact minute the AP chemistry key transferred. He used his master key card to bypass the main security door, Tae-Oh stated, his gaze fixed on the dean. But the file contains more than security footage. It holds records of Preston selling midterms to the junior varsity squad for the past 2 years. Preston shot out of his chair. Tae-Oh, you cannot do this. My scouts. Your scouts are gone. Tae-Oh turned to face Preston, stepping into his personal space. The sheer physical force of his presence forced the backup captain to step back. I sent the files to the university recruiters an hour ago. You will never play college hockey. You are done. I sat frozen in the leather chair. I watched Tae-Oh dismantle a legacy student in under 3 minutes. He showed zero mercy. He operated with pure, calculated destruction. This was the Ice King. This was the ruthless heir to the Kwon Empire, executing a threat with terrifying precision. Dean Lockwood hesitated, his eyes darting between the screen and Preston. He wanted to protect his legacy student. Tae-Oh leaned closer, bracing his hands on the wood. Do the right thing, Dean, or the Kwon Logistics Group pulls the school's funding by noon. Dean Lockwood closed the laptop. He cleared his throat. Miss Biles, you are cleared of all charges. Preston, come with me. Tae-Oh did not wait for an apology. He turned and walked out the heavy oak doors. I grabbed my backpack and followed his broad shoulders down the empty hallway. We bypassed the cafeteria and the classrooms. We kept walking until we reached the boys' athletic locker room. The space sat empty during 5th period, and the smell of cold air and athletic tape hung in the room. Tae-Oh stopped near the back benches. He braced both hands against the metal lockers, bowing his head. His chest heaved. I stepped closer. My eyes caught the state of his right hand. His knuckles were split open, the skin raw and bruised deep purple. He had not just hacked a security server today, he had made someone talk. He turned around. The cold, calculated mask from the boardroom was gone. Raw, unfiltered intensity burned in his dark eyes. He looked down at me, his bruised hand resting against his thigh. He closed the distance between us until I felt his heat. Are you afraid of me? He asked. Are you afraid of me? I looked at the broken skin on his knuckles, then up into his dark, searching eyes. The air in the locker room turned heavy. I should be, I said. So you destroyed his entire future in 3 minutes. He tried to steal yours. Tae-Oh closed the space between us. I do not tolerate threats against my people. I did not back away. The territorial claim sent a shiver down my spine, but the fear vanished. I pointed to a red first aid box mounted on the concrete wall. Sit down, I ordered. He hesitated, surprised by the command, but he obeyed. He dropped onto the wooden bench. I retrieved the metal box, pulled out an antiseptic pad, and sat beside him. I took his large hand in mine. His jaw tightened. I dabbed the torn skin. He did not flinch from the sting. He just watched my face. You carry too much weight, I whispered. I carry the Kwon Empire, he stated. His tone held a raw exhaustion. My father expects perfection. One mistake, one sign of weakness, and the board replaces me. I survive by striking first.
Honestly,
I always have. I traced the edge of a deep bruise with my thumb. The steel walls I spent 3 years building started to crack. I saw the boy hidden beneath the armor. I understand, I confessed. The truth felt terrifying. If I fail one test, my Yale admission and my foundation grant disappear. My mother works 2 catering jobs to afford my textbooks. I have to be flawless because I have no safety net. We both live in cages. Yours is just made of gold. Tae-Oh exhaled a ragged breath. He turned his hand over, intertwining his long fingers with mine. His touch sent a rush of heat through my veins. You are the one person who looks at me and sees a cage, he murmured. The rest of the world just sees the crown. He leaned in. The scent of cedar and clean soap surrounded me. His gaze dropped to my lips, and my heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I tilted my chin up, closing the remaining distance. I felt the warmth of his breath. I closed my eyes, ready to surrender to the intense pull between us. A deafening shriek shattered the silence. The school fire alarm blared above us, flashing blinding red light across the lockers. The fire alarm pierced my eardrums. Panic flooded the hallways outside the locker room. Tae-Oh did not flinch. He tightened his grip on my hand and pulled me toward the back emergency exit.
Honestly, I'm
we
just really
bypassed
glad
the
we found this
chaos,
place. It feels
bursting
straight out
into
of
the
a movie.
crisp afternoon
Me too.
air.
Here's to finding
Get
hidden
in,
gems.
he
Cheers.
ordered, opening the passenger door of a restored vintage Mustang. I did not argue. I climbed inside. He slammed the door, got behind the wheel, and hit the gas. We left the manicured lawns of St. Jude behind. We left the whispers, the sabotage, and the heavy expectations in the rearview mirror. He drove for an hour. The towering glass buildings of the city surrendered to open roads and dense trees. The tension in my shoulders melted. In the passenger seat of this old car, he was not the untouchable ice king. I was not the desperate scholarship girl. We were just two people outrunning the noise. He parked outside a faded neon diner. We sat in a cracked vinyl booth and ordered cherry pie and black coffee. Nobody stared at us. Nobody whispered. Tae-Oh ate his food in silence, but his dark eyes never left my face. "You look different," I noted, tracing the rim of my coffee mug. "How?" "Human," I replied. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. It transformed his entire face, erasing the cold mask he wore at school. For the first time since I met him, he looked at peace. The sun dipped below the horizon by the time we walked out. The diner's neon sign bathed the empty parking lot in a warm red glow. The evening chill settled over us, but I did not feel cold. Tae-Oh stopped beside the car door. He boxed me in again, but this time he brought no dominance. He brought raw vulnerability. He reached out. His bruised fingers brushed my cheek. He traced the curve of my jawline, his touch sending a rush of heat straight to my heart. I stopped breathing. "Jordyn," he murmured, his voice a deep rumble in the quiet night. I never cared about the dance. I stared up at him, my mind spinning. "You asked me 3 times. You bought massive signs. You made it a spectacle." "I needed an excuse," he confessed, stepping closer until our chests almost touched. "I needed a reason to breach your walls, because watching you from a distance was driving me insane." I walked into St. Jude on Monday morning. My breathing felt steady. The weekend at the diner had cracked my defenses. I wore his heavy varsity jacket, the cedar scent wrapping around me like a shield. I believed I was safe. The illusion shattered before I reached my locker. The main hallway did not buzz with the usual morning chatter. It buzzed with digital static. Every student held a phone. Every screen displayed the same anonymous mass text. Sloane stood by the trophy case. She saw me approach and tapped her screen. The volume sat at maximum. A crackling audio recording echoed off the tile walls. "The new scholarship girl?" The voice belonged to Tae-Oh. Arrogant, cold, bored. It was his tone from months ago, before the library, before the ice rink. Another voice, Preston, laughed in the background. "She rejected you, man." "She thinks she has standards," Tae-Oh's recorded voice replied. "Give me until prom. I will break her down. She will wear my jacket just like the rest of them. It is a game." The recording looped. "Give me until prom. It is a game." My chest tightened. The air vanished from the corridor. The heat of the jacket turned into a suffocating trap. I had let him in. I had told him about my mother, my Yale scholarship, the cages we lived in. He took my truth and weaponized it for a locker room joke. The crowd parted. Tae-Oh walked through the center of the hallway. He looked relaxed, the morning wind in his dark hair. Then he saw the phones. He heard his own recorded voice echoing from 50 different speakers. His relaxed posture vanished. The color drained from his face. He looked at me. Raw panic flared in his dark eyes. "Jordyn," he said. He stepped forward. He reached out with a bruised hand. "Listen to me. That was January. That was before—" "Stop." My voice held zero emotion. It felt dead, empty. He froze. The entire school watched. I reached for the zipper of the heavy blue wool. I pulled it down. The jacket slid off my shoulders. The cedar scent vanished into the stale hallway air. "Jordyn, please." The untouchable Ice King begged. I let the heavy fabric fall. It hit the floor right at the toes of his expensive sneakers. I looked him dead in the eye. I built my steel walls back up, higher and thicker than ever before. "Game over, Tae-Oh." I turned my back on him and walked away. I told myself I would stay in my bedroom. I laid my AP biology textbook open on my desk. But the silence in my empty house echoed louder than the terrible recording playing on repeat in my head. The entire school was at the state semifinal game. I lasted 20 minutes before I grabbed my coat. I pushed through the upper service doors of the arena. I stood in the deep shadows of the highest bleachers, hidden far away from the screaming crowd. I told myself I just wanted to see if he cared. I needed to know if losing me even registered on his radar, or if he was already laughing with his friends about winning the bet. I looked down at the ice and my breath caught in my throat. Tae-Oh was not playing hockey. He was waging a war. He did not execute the flawless, calculated plays that made him a legendary captain. He skated with reckless, terrifying speed. He threw himself into the opposing defenders, ignoring his own safety. And he checked a rival player with enough force to rattle the glass barrier, but he left his own flank wide open. He was a wrecking ball. He was destroying himself. The crowd went quiet. The cheers turned into nervous murmurs. Even from the rafters, I could see the tension radiating from his rigid shoulders. He played like a man with nothing left to lose. With 2 minutes left on the clock, he stole the puck and launched a breakaway. He flew across the center ice. 2 massive defensemen collapsed on him from both sides. He didn't swerve. He didn't brace for impact. He slammed straight into the boards at full speed. The brutal sound of the collision echoed above the crowd. The referee blew the whistle dead. Tae-Oh crumpled to the ice. A collective gasp ripped through the stadium. Medics scrambled over the barrier, rushing toward his fallen frame. Tae-Oh shoved them away. He refused their hands. He forced himself up onto one knee, his chest heaving. He ripped his helmet off and threw it across the frozen rink. A thin line of bright red blood ran down his sharp jaw. He didn't look at the scoreboard. He didn't acknowledge his furious coach or the concerned medics. He turned his desperate, burning eyes toward the packed stands. He scanned the sea of faces, his chest rising and falling in harsh gasps, searching the crowd for the one person who had already walked away. The next morning, the green light on my webcam blinked, signaling the start of my Yale alumni interview. When the video call finally ended, I shut the laptop. The quiet of my bedroom rushed in, suffocating and cold. I had just secured the next step for my dream college. Yet all I could think about was the heavy blue varsity jacket I had dropped on the hallway floor yesterday. Hours passed. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I ignored it. I refused to look at another group chat dissecting my humiliation. I refused to see pictures of Tae-Oh moving on. But the phone vibrated again, then a third time. Continuous urgent pulses against the wood. I reached over and picked it up. It was not a group chat. It was an anonymous number. A single text glowed above the attached video file. Tae-Oh cornered Preston. He hacked the cloud drive and made the whole team watch the real tape. You need to see it. My thumb hovered over the glowing screen. I told myself to delete it. I told myself to protect my peace and keep my walls intact. I pressed play. The shaky footage showed the boys' locker room from months ago, and the angle was low. Preston held the phone, recording from the shadows behind a row of metal benches. Tae-Oh stood in the center, unlacing his skates. "The new scholarship girl?" Tae-Oh's voice echoed, sounding just like the leaked audio. Preston laughed off camera. "She rejected you, man." "She thinks she has standards," Tae-Oh replied. I braced myself, preparing for the terrible conclusion. I waited for the cruel bet. But the video did not cut off. The audio continued, raw and unedited. "She thinks she has standards," Tae-Oh repeated, his tone shifting from casual to dangerously sharp. "And she is right. She is better than everyone in this room. You all treat her like a target because you know you cannot match her." "Come on, it is just a game," Preston scoffed on the tape. Tae-Oh dropped his skates. He crossed the locker room in 2 strides and shoved Preston hard against the metal lockers. The hidden camera shook violently, capturing the pure fury on Tae-Oh's face. "It is not a game," Tae-Oh snarled, his voice vibrating with absolute rage. "If any of you disrespect her, I will end your season. I do not care about a stupid prom bet. I care about her. You stay away from Jordyn." The screen went black. The phone slipped from my trembling fingers. He never made a bet. He never used me for a joke. He had been defending me behind closed doors since the very beginning, and I had just walked away from him. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the dark screen of my phone. The video finished playing 10 minutes ago, but the silence in my room felt deafening. He defended me. He put his own hockey season on the line to protect my name. And he never cared about a bet, and he never used me for a joke. I had taken the one person who stood between me and the toxicity of St. Jude's elite academy and threw his protection right back in his face. I checked the clock. 8 in the evening. Tonight was prom. Across town, the senior class was stepping out of limousines, adjusting designer gowns, and walking into a ballroom wrapped in silk and flashing cameras. I wore oversized gray sweatpants and a faded college t-shirt. I had spent months telling myself I did not care about their elite parties. I convinced myself that staying home was a victory, a testament to my focus and my independence. It felt like a miserable defeat. I walked into the dark living room and sank onto the couch. My mother was working a double shift, catering a corporate event downtown, leaving the house empty. I pulled my knees to my chest. I thought about the heavy wool of his varsity jacket. I thought about the warmth radiating from him in the freezing ice rink, the rare smile he gave me outside that neon diner, and the absolute fury in his voice when he pinned Preston against the metal lockers. I ruined it. I let the whispers and the insecurity win. I closed my eyes, resting my head against the back of the couch. I tried to convince myself that this was for the best. Without the distraction, without the drama, I could focus on Yale. I could leave this city and never look back. The lie tasted bitter. A harsh beam of white light slashed through the front window. It swept across the far wall, casting long, sharp shadows before resting still. The low, deep rumble of a powerful engine vibrated through the floorboards. I froze. A car door slammed. Heavy, deliberate footsteps echoed on the concrete walkway leading to my porch. The steps did not hesitate. They carried purpose. They carried absolute certainty. 3 loud, urgent knocks hit my front door. I pulled the heavy front door open. The porch light spilled across the concrete. Tae-Oh stood there. He did not hold a poster board. He did not bring an audience. He stood alone in the cool night air. He wore a custom tuxedo, the midnight blue fabric molded to his broad shoulders. A jagged cut marred his sharp jaw from the brutal hockey collision. Deep shadows bruised the skin under his eyes. He looked exhausted. He looked battered. Yet his dark gaze burned with intense, unyielding heat. "You should be at the dance," I whispered. "I go where you go," he stated. My chest tightened. The air grew thick. I saw the unedited video, Kwon Tae-Oh. The anonymous text came through. "I know what you did in that locker room." He did not flinch. "Then you know the truth. I know you put your season on the line to protect my name. I know I walked away when I needed to stay." He stepped closer. The familiar scent of cedar wood washed over the porch, chasing away the chill. He did not demand an apology. He did not ask for gratitude. He reached out and extended his right hand. His bruised, broken knuckles stood in stark contrast to the pristine white cuff of his dress shirt. "I do not want to fight anymore, Jordyn." His voice carried a raw, desperate edge. "I am done performing. I am done playing safe. I do not care about the rumors, the stares, or the elite crowd. I care about this." He kept his hands suspended between us. I looked down at my faded sweatpants and bare feet. "I am not dressed for a ballroom. You could wear rags and still rule every person in that building." He took one final step, closing the remaining distance. He leaned down, bringing his face inches from mine, the heat radiating from his chest, wrapped around me. "This is the end of the game," he warned. His tone left zero room for doubt. "I will not ask a fourth time. Shut this door, and I will walk away forever. But if you take my hand, you get in my car. We walk into that ballroom together, and you claim your throne." I stared at his outstretched fingers, then up into the dark eyes of the boy who shattered his own world just to keep me safe. I did not shut the door. I turned around and walked up the stairs. I stripped off the faded sweatpants and pulled the emerald silk gown from the back of my closet. The smooth fabric settled against my skin. I pinned my hair up, took a deep breath, and walked back down. He waited on the porch, a statue in the night. When he saw me, the exhaustion in his face vanished. A new, intense fire took its place. We drove in silence. The powerful engine roared through the empty streets. We reached the Grand Hotel ballroom an hour past the start time. The valet took the keys. Tae-Oh stepped around the hood and offered his arm. I rested my fingers against the dark fabric of his sleeve. We walked up the grand marble stairs. The heavy double doors stood shut. He pushed them open. The bass from the speakers vibrated through the floorboards. A sea of silk and tailored suits filled the room. Then, people noticed the open doors, and the whispers started near the entrance and spread across the massive room like a shockwave. Hundreds of elite students stopped dancing. Hundreds of heads turned. Sloane stood near the punch bowl, her mouth open in shock. Preston was nowhere in sight. Tae-Oh ignored them all. He moved his hand from my arm to the bare curve of my lower back. His touch burned against my skin, sending a clear, undeniable message to every person watching. I belonged here, and I belonged with him. We did not walk to the center of the dance floor. We did not need the spotlight. He guided me to the shadowed edge of the room. We stood in the periphery, untouchable. The elite crowd kept their distance. The toxic hierarchy of St. Jude's Academy lay broken on the floor. He turned to face me. The bruised knuckles resting on my waist felt like a badge of honor. So he lowered his head, his dark eyes locked on mine. "You came," he murmured. "I stopped running," I corrected. I reached up and grabbed the lapel of his midnight blue tuxedo. I did not wait for him to ask. I pulled his head down and pressed my lips to his. The kiss hit with the force of a collision, raw and absolute. The silence of the crowd no longer mattered. The stares meant nothing. The war was over, and the untouchable Ice King was mine. The valedictorian medal weighed heavy against the collar of my graduation gown. I stood at the wooden podium, looking out over the immaculate lawns of St. Jude's Academy. The elite crowd sat in perfectly aligned rows. Sloane stared at her lap, refusing to meet my gaze. Preston sat near the back, stripped of his captain title and his college prospects. I leaned into the microphone. Then the feedback whined for a second before the courtyard fell dead silent. "We spend years building walls," I told the crowd, my voice echoing off the stone architecture. "We confuse public spectacle with actual power. We let toxic hierarchies dictate our worth because it feels safer to follow the rules than to break the game." I gripped the edges of the podium, but power is not a performance. Power is knowing your exact value in a room designed to make you feel small. I learned that boundaries are not cages. They are filters. They keep the noise out, and they let the truth in. Do not let anyone turn your life into a game. Demand respect or walk away. My gaze dropped to the front row. Tae-Oh sat there. He wore a crisp, dark suit, the sunlight catching the tungsten ring on his finger. The cold, unreadable mask of the ice hockey captain vanished months ago. He looked at me with raw, absolute pride. A genuine smile broke across his sharp face. We dismantled the hierarchy of this school. We did not do it with vengeance or cruelty. We did it by refusing to perform. We chose authenticity. We chose each other. I stepped down from the stage, the valedictorian speech complete. Tae-Oh did not wait for the ceremony to end. He met me at the bottom of the stairs. He ignored the gasps from the faculty and the stares from the parents. He wrapped his arm around my waist, pulled me flush against his chest, and kissed me in the bright morning sun. The St. Jude Ice King was gone. My partner remained. We turned our backs on the crowd and walked toward Yale. And that is how you rewrite the rules, my beautiful drama addicts. Let's talk about the real psychology behind Jordyn and Tae-Oh's story. Jordyn's ultimate power came from her absolute refusal to accept a performative relationship. In social dynamics, strict boundaries command respect. Tae-Oh assumed his status and public dominance would win her over, but he had to abandon his ego to build a genuine, vulnerable connection. That is the psychological takeaway today. Never lower your standards for a grand spectacle. Wait for the person who respects your peace behind closed doors. Did this story keep your heart racing? If you loved watching the untouchable athlete risk his entire crown for the scholarship girl, smash that subscribe button right now. You need to check out the channel because our next video drops tomorrow and the stakes are even more insane. I am talking about a ruthless corporate heir, a forged contract and a revenge plot that will leave you speechless. Click the video on your screen right now to keep the drama going. I will see you in the next one.